is there intelligence in your design? So maybe the bridge between the masterful ability to take complex things and make them simple and the understanding the threshold of where beauty needs to sit in that, it has to have a high level of intelligence behind it.
Welcome to Cause and Effect, a podcast brought to you by the Dunham Podcast Network.
Here, we will provide a fresh voice that breaks down the most recent leadership lessons, fundraising trends, and the ups and downs within the nonprofit industry.
And our goal? Increasing your effectiveness for more impact.
Hey, welcome to today's episode of the Cause and Effect Podcast. I'm Trent Dunham, President and CEO of Dunham+Company, your host. And today I have with me Dan Sumpter, the Chief Product Officer at Dunham+Company. We're going to be talking about creativity with a purpose. It's always good to have conversations with you because I like to fancy myself a complete non-creative, but you have tried to teach me differently that, no, Trent, you do have creative aspects to your...
It's in there.
Yeah, somewhere, like really, really deep in there.
Yeah, we found pieces of it.
Yeah, that's good. But today, we want to dispel some myths today. And maybe it probably is going to be more helpful for people who do not fancy themselves a creative but have to lead creatives or operate with or work with creatives on a regular basis but maybe aren't like wired that way, don't fully understand that part of the business or how people kind of operate that way. So there are some misconceptions about creativity. If even for people who've been in the creative world for a long time, sometimes there are myths and preconceived notions about creativity. I find it to be especially amongst young people who maybe haven't totally understood the application of the creative process to the expression of an organization or what they do or what they're about and those types of things. So we're going to dive into all that kind of stuff today. We got kind of like the world is our oyster as we dive into this. Creativity with a Purpose is the title, as you've seen. And Dan, I want to start our conversation by just kind of starting at the highest level. So when you think of creativity, when you think about the creative product, at its highest level, I'm running an organization. There's a creative department within my organization that helps express what we do, how we do it, communicates to the constituents. What is that creative team's, I've mentioned some of them, but what are some of the responsibilities of that team? How does that team view itself in light of the other parts of the organization? And what are some of the things they feel like, I've got a big job to do X in the creative department?
Yeah, and I think as part of answering that question, going back to that premise of maybe some misunderstandings around that team. And I've joked before that I'm a recovering creative. And I say that with a lot of love because I still am very much a creative, but I understand the burden that a lot of creatives carry. And creative jobs can be emotional jobs because it's a personal expression that you're trying to put out. So, you're creating things oftentimes from scratch, bringing into life things that don't exist. You're handed a blank sheet of paper, a blank canvas, a blank concept. And it takes time. And for some people, whether I think times of my life I've spent in the music world, and think about how vulnerable it is for a songwriter to take a page out of their journal and put music to it and then submit it for critique.
Yeah.
It's very personal.
Yeah.
And so in corporate world and agency world and nonprofit world, you have versions of creatives that, hey, can you write this for me or design this for me or put a strategy for this brand together? In order to do a really good job at that, the best people that I've worked with, they completely immerse themselves into that project.
Yeah.
They feel it. They see themselves as a extension of that initiative, whether it's another organization. Like in that moment, you're a member of that team.
Yeah.
And you're living, eating, and breathing. And in our case, just very much prayerful about what is God's plan for this organization? Where is He leading them? What is my role to create something from scratch? And sometimes you're given an ample amount of information to hopefully make it a little bit more strategic and say, okay, here's some non-negotiables I have to hit. That's helpful for a creative because it kind of takes just a broad target and makes it a lot more narrow. That's one of the things that I've seen really creative teams thrive under is that kind of clarity. But what is creativity? And I've spent a lot of years talking with people a lot more eloquent than me about creativity, and they can say it way better than I can. But the gist of it is this: it is problem solving at its core. And you can talk about creativity in terms of like beauty, like creativity like a painter or a writer or an architect or whatever. But that's no less creative than someone who has a busy life with 5 kids trying to manage their time. They have to get really creative. And how am I going to have a good relationship with my kids? How am I going to have spiritual disciplines in my life? How am I going to solve these problems? And so I think what's been a helpful construct for me in talking with creative teams and working on the projects that we work on is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And it kind of takes the ethereal, what is this that we're working on, a bit out of the equation and makes it a lot more practical. And it allows maybe less creative minds, because you think about your mind's eye. Okay, it doesn't exist yet, but is the person I'm talking to, can they see it the same way that I see it? You try to put words to it. You try to describe what direction you think you want to go in, and you could end up with 2 radically different expectations at the end of it. And so for our process, and the one thing that I've learned is try to break it down into as many visual components as possible. For us, we established mood boards first. What do you like? Let me get you to point out some things. Let me set the table with options so that I make sure our mind's eye is seeing the same thing first. Less surprises at the end. And a phrase that I use often a lot with creative teams is, if we're going to build something from scratch, you should be so connected to us throughout this journey that by the time you see the final result, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I expected. You don't get the theatrics of a big reveal, but you actually get alignment in the process. And so creativity, if we approach it as it's fundamentally problem solving, you're working with and you want them to be emotional. You want them to feel it. And so you have to create the space and the sensitivities for them to do that. I would say the creative teams that I work with, because they are more emotional, it's harder to make, really significant changes because that immediately is connected to, well, how is that going to affect my process for how I go about doing this? Okay, now I have to learn new systems. Now I have to do, and I totally respect that. So as a creative leader, I try to go out of my way to carry that burden personally so that the artistic people who are doing emotional work can stay in that headspace. So you want it to be problem solving at its core. You want to create emotional room for people, and you want to be very iterative in the process so that you can keep alignment. It's not fun to have a surprise at the end, a big ta-da that misses. And that's actually more hurtful to everybody involved, and it's a ton of wasted time. So if you can really just kind of build a process around those components with creative teams, I think you're going to go forward faster.
So it's interesting you bring up the whole concept of solving problems. Usually in our line of work, that problem we're trying to solve falls into buckets related to helping a particular target audience understand something, whether it's who is this organization, what are they about, what is this campaign that's happening, and what is it about, what are outcomes that are going to be become as a result of it when it's completed, what has happened in the life change of people who've been affected by this organization or this campaign or this ministry. So it seems like most of the problems we're trying to solve in that is the communication of who we are, what we do, and can you understand that, and is this something you see yourself aligned with and want to be involved with in some way? Seems like those are generally the problems we're trying to solve. Are there other categories I'm not thinking about that we tend to run in from a marketing, fundraising, communications organization standpoint?
I mean, I think you're right on. We're trying to move the hearts of people. And there's often a lot of complexities around that. There's the complexities of what's happening in culture that may be forming people's opinions about that. There's potential cynicisms that are in the equation that you want to overcome. There is misunderstanding. Sometimes there's a whole education required. Like we want to meet a need, but you don't even know that that need exists. You go through your life on a daily basis and this thing's happening over here. I first have to make you aware of the problem in order to compel you to be a part of the solution. And so good creativity in terms of problem solving, it accomplishes that. And we find at first it accomplishes it in a very robust way. and then the discipline of tailoring that down into a really simple way, a really simple graphic, a really simple headline. So if we can build an iceberg of sorts where I can get your attention in a really succinct way, I understand all the complexities are here. There's a lot of felt needs involved. There's some educational components. There's some goals that you're trying to hit. That's all there. But I understand I can't dump all of that on my audience
Right.
at the first engagement.
Yeah.
So I have to have a strategic approach to the highest level of emotional engagement all the way down to that logical conversion that says, I now understand everything that I need to understand and I'm with you.
Yeah, tends to be, at least my perception, that there are two kind of fatal flaws to creative process. One of the fatal flaws is it's so complex I don't even know where you're talking about. Like there's so many things going on, you're telling so many stories, you're making so many different points. Like they may all be valid, but it's more like a documentary than it is anything else, right?
Yeah.
So it's a fatal flaw. Another fatal flaw is that it's pretty, but I have no idea what you're saying. Like, well, that was moving, and yet I have no idea what you're talking about. Or what am I supposed to recognize as the issue or my involvement? Or we could look at it objectively and say that was really cool, but then you're just left with nothing.
Yes.
Those seem to me, from my perspective, the two kind of extremes of fatal. Are there other ways in which a creative product will kind of fall over?
Yeah. I think those are good two extreme boundaries. It's so complex I can't understand it, or it's really cool but it's kind of meaningless at the end.
Yeah.
I feel something but I don't even know what I feel. And is there an action that you want me to take?
Yeah.
And it's actually, the more that I do this work, the more that I've realized there's very few people who can carry all of that. You actually find that there's different members of teams, people out there in the industry that work on things that have different skill sets in that. I want the cool kids to do the cool stuff. It's art. It's really precise, maybe not in clarity precision, but that coloring is going to be perfect. That video is going to be filmed beautifully. That design is going to be world-class. And some of that you could say is subjective. I believe that the quality, there is a version of quality that's pretty objective. That's good.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily tell you why, but maybe it's defined by trends in the culture or brands that we associate with quality, and it kind of looks like it sits on the shelf with those things. I really have a need and respect people who can hit that level. They may not understand how to take all the complexity and make it simple. And I have to build teams of people that touch it at different points in the process. And if we can start with the complexity made simple in messaging, let's say.
That's good.
If we can land that first, and then as we brief the team that's going to come in and decorate it, I'm not putting on them the undue burden. It's not within their skill set. It's not even what I've asked them to do. I've not asked you to solve the complexity problem. I've asked you to make this as beautiful as you can make it. But I've given you some boundaries to play in that you're very clear what the objective is. You're very clear of this kind of inverted funnel of we're going to start with a single value proposition, a very clear headline, and then through copy and different campaigns. And also to understand that we work in multiple components. We don't ask a single asset to do the whole storytelling piece. And so you might run an ad campaign or you might play a 30-second video spot on television. You couldn't possibly tell the whole story in that, but you're creating a journey that if you go from here to this website, or you're targeted with this ad, or then you experience this thing on the devotional page or a blog or an email, we have to understand as strategists at the highest level, not the individual players that are responsible for one asset. The whole collection of the campaign has to solve the problem together. And the beauty of that, and sometimes when we're talking with clients that we work with, it's really important to explain this. I was just dealing with some of this week where I know that this particular component that we're building is the entry level, highest, most basic value proposition that we could possibly make all this into. And the feedback was that's not detailed enough. And so what I had to do was really spell back out, okay, understand what this is intended to do and where it points people. We pick it up here, we finish it here, or we continue it here, cultivate the relationship here. And so the idea that complexity and beauty might actually be different people on your team. And it's very rare and if you have somebody that kind of understands that, I think there's actually a greater need for finding people who can take complexity and make it clear.
100%.
that person is a more valuable lead of a campaign.
Yeah.
And then they can help give the boundaries to the people who are making it beautiful.
Yeah. I think oftentimes we fail to put ourselves in the seat of the target audience.
Mm-hmm.
We want to create a beautiful product, and we want to tell this whole narrative. We live at 365, 24/7, like it's our world. The people that we're targeting have never experienced it, rarely experience it, or even our most dedicated people occasionally experience it. I mean, really think about that. So if that's their perspective of our organization, our campaign, or whatever, to your point, for us to go to really tell the whole story in a detailed, complex way and expect someone on a passing glance to want to stop down and consume all that and figure out the complexity underneath it, it's just the wrong expectation. It's you're never going to hit on that. So that's why we do a thing called brand strategy. That's why we do campaign overviews. That's why we do campaigns, propositions, those types of things. I think maybe detail for the audience when we approach a campaign. So maybe not an organizational brand, but the brand for a campaign of some kind, marketing campaign, a capital campaign, a fundraising campaign, a communications campaign of some kind. We're trying to roll it up into one singular kind of like perspective, summary statement. How do we go through that process? Because like you said, it can be fairly complex, but how do you get it to the point where it is succinct and consumable?
Mm-hmm. So if you look at the corporate brand identity as the parent and then the marketing campaign as the child. So we 365, 24/7 are this as an organization. That's our corporate brand promise. And then in this season, we're going to run a campaign about a specific initiative.
Yep.
What we find all too often is that if you haven't done the discipline of tightening the corporate thing up, your seasonal campaign, your sprint for a specific initiative is going to have a hard time reaching its full maturity. It's going to be floating out there a bit like an orphan.
Yeah.
You may bring in a team like us to try to make a really sophisticated campaign, but it doesn't really have the backbone of the corporate strategy to reinforce
So
that.
if the campaign feels bigger than the org, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens.
Yeah. And you get short-term wins
Yeah.
from a killer campaign, and you don't get long-term retention because the brand's not actually delivering on that all year long. So I know that's not a specific answer to your question, but more often than not, what starts as a campaign turns into, we've got some things about your corporate value proposition that needs to be adjusted.
Okay, get tightened
because
up.
it doesn't align.
Yeah.
And you love what we've done here, but actually you're going to have trouble in 6 months from now maintaining this because that's not who you really are.
That's good.
But in order to, so that the two processes are actually very similar. One at a corporate identity level and one at a seasonal level. But you're still going through a very similar process to understand what the felt needs of the audience are, to understand, okay, we have these core competencies. Think of it like 2 gears. Inside this gear are multiple notches that could grab and have some traction on it. So we're good at this. We're solving this problem. We have these kind of staff members. We are located in these parts of the world, whatever it is. These are the things that we do, our top 10. And these are the top 10 needs of the felt needs of the audience. We're concerned about this. Maybe we're ignorant on this, but if you gave us the right education, we would easily go, I'm about that. I'm in this stage of my life. I have this much disposable income. I'm passionate about these kinds of things. Felt needs, core competencies. We are turning those 2 gears to try to find one, not 2, not 3, not 4, one place where those are the strongest connection between the 2. And that doesn't mean that when those gears connect, you do inherit all of the gear and all of the gear. So if I'm good at 10 things, but I build a value proposition on one, I get the other 9.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling one thing and I come to this organization and because that one thing is my connection point, I'm still bringing my whole self. I can move with you through some change or move with you through some growth and potentially connect with you on more levels because now I have more to me than just the one thing. But the campaign to have that discipline to say one felt need and one competency connecting on a brand promise or a campaign promise is really the hardest thing to do because you're trying to say, to make it simple and to make all the complexities come down to one value proposition, I have to find one notch in this gear and one notch in this gear and connect them as strongly as I can.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of work. I think oftentimes comms department, someone will be like, hey, we need a video for our donor event. Hey, creative team, will you go make a video for the donor event? That's literally the ask.
Yeah.
Well, you could get anything back.
Anything.
And who's to say it's good, bad, or indifferent?
Yep.
So I know that's probably a simplistic example, but maybe even not to that degree. But too often, creative teams are just deployed with vague or not descriptive enough tasks to go accomplish. And so as a result, what you talked about, you get back kind of like the whole panoply of things, and it's going to be a cornucopia of who knows what.
Panoply and cornucopia in the
all
same
in one
sentence.
sentence.
You're so creative.
I know. It is almost Thanksgiving. So the question then for us is, how do we best equip a creative team to accomplish a project like that most effectively? And what should our expectations be as people like putting in the order or,
Let me talk about that from my seat inside of an agency, but then also my time in church work and what a lot of people listening to this might feel. You're right. I want a video for a thing. Like, okay, a talking head video, a user-generated content kind of selfie iPhone video. We see a lot of ads on social media right now of like, join my workout session, and it's just me holding up my phone, or look at this candle that I love, and it's all user-generated content. That's a style. It's very easy to make, and it's very effective. Then there's this brand Super Bowl commercial kind of cinematic approach to video. Then there's kind of a hybrid where you're cutting to documentary testimony style pieces. When you're dealing with a creative team, if you don't start bringing clarity to what your expectations are on that, the time and budget could be $100,000 difference in the kind of video that you want to make. And I would just encourage people, and I think people listening to this, we live in a world where there is so many kinds of media. I think we all can probably think of something that was really effective and that was done basically, and something that was really effective and was probably a big production. So I don't necessarily tie effectiveness to a budget given or a style of how it's filmed or whatever. But this is true of all kinds of creativity. And if you work with a creative person, so going back to that person that's really rare and very important to have, who can take complexity and bring it to simple. The best thing that you can do before going into any sort of production, so you're in kind of a pre-production phase, ideation strategy phase, is to start by saying, what is this intended to accomplish? If you can just say, we have, maybe even in writing, like we're building a brief for this, and the problem that we're trying to solve is blank, and the action that we're trying to get them to take is blank. Then you have to look at it in context. So is this doing this as a standalone piece? Is this in conjunction? So you mentioned an event, for example. When I go into those situations, I don't want to just have influence over the video itself. I want to have influence over when the video is played, who walks up on stage after that event is done, and what's the first thing out of their mouth. That transition matters. What they point people to. Is there other assets in the room, on the chairs, on the tables? Is there going to be people coming up on stage to amplify the message that we just said? Like a really good piece of creative understands the context that it sits within. And if you're going to get the best piece of beauty, so talking about complexity versus beauty, the beauty people over here are probably going to create a highly emotional but vague piece of content, which can work if it knows its place. It has to know its place. And that thing without a home, without follow-up, without context, without the handoff being defined, it's going to fall short. But if you go into it saying, okay, what kind of, and find people on your team and get them to ask a ton of questions. Get them to ask, okay, and a good video person, a good graphic designer, they know the world that they live in. If you'll just give audience with them to a bit to say, okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. My objective is this. My call to action is this. And you could even start by saying, my budget is this. I want to spend that. So can you play within those boundaries? And then allow them to come and say, okay, we've got to get our mind's eye going in the same direction. What I'm probably thinking is, and a lot of people who aren't creative, I find this a lot, they will send me something they saw. And that's their version of telling you what's in their mind. They couldn't type up a beautiful email. They couldn't sit down and describe it to you. They're just going to forward you a link and say, can we do something like this? And probably what they send you cost $1 million. It's like, I loved this Super Bowl ad. Can we do something like that? It's the job of the creative to really interpret that and say, okay, so given our budget and given our calls to action, and then let's talk context. Where is this going to sit? Is this going to sit in the context of a host saying things? Is this going to get something that arrives in the mail? Are they also going to be getting an email in conjunction with that? You name it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you can get the conversation going into first start high and then get as granular as you can. Now, be careful when you get granular, because if you have a creative person that's worth their weight, you should be able to trust them to say, here's kind of the raw boundaries that I'm going to present you with. Go create within that, and then come back and present me with some ideas. And I encourage people, like I worked on teams where that presentation process was super formal. I think it was a waste of time, but it was printed concepts glued to blackboard, put on easels, brought into boardrooms, and then presented very formally. But we never proceeded into production until those things were agreed upon. I've seen very casual things where you just pull up ideas on your iPhone, or you send links back and say, okay, here's that version I found on Pinterest or Instagram that's our version of that. But make sure that you're keeping that visual dialogue going throughout the process, so that you do know, hey, I want a video for my event. Know what kind of video, what kind of budget, what's the call to action, and what's the context that it sits in.
Those are great questions to ask, and even forethought to give as you start to make that request of the team. Sometimes, if we look at the two extremes, complex and really beautiful without a point, do you see most often things falling in one of the categories more than the other? Or are they pretty equal?
I think the hardest thing to do is the final 10% of both of those categories, which doesn't directly answer your question, but I think that what you want is you want the best of both.
Yeah.
And they fall apart, in that they're really beautiful, or they're actually mediocre in both.
Which is probably more common, right?
It's more common.
Yeah.
That wasn't really well executed. It kind of looked like basic nonprofit work.
Yeah.
I mean, like that, you probably didn't have much money to put on that. You probably didn't have much forethought. You probably said too much because you're just trying to stuff everything into a 5-pound bag.
Right.
And you ended up with just kind of a blah thing.
Word salad with pictures.
Yeah. Yep. Throw some slides up there, get it done.
Yeah.
But the final 10% of both clarity, like the hardest thing to do in a campaign in terms of clarity, is to get up to that headline that cuts through, that's simple. It evokes enough curiosity because it's vague enough to want you to keep engaging. It doesn't just give you the answer. It doesn't just present you with a question that's an immediate yes or no, but it intrigues you with a felt need that we know you have. And you're going to want to say, okay, if I am being presented with an opportunity to engage with that, it's a yes. That final 10% is the hardest. And we have a gal on our team, Liz, who is so skilled at saying, I have pages and pages and pages of the complexity, the background information, the needs that we're trying to meet, the tone of this, and it all ladders up to a single 5-word sentence that can become a headline. That right there is the hardest thing to do. On the beauty side, the same thing is true. That final 10, 20% where you're exhausted from the edit and the revisions, but it's not there yet, is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
It's hard as a creative director to give language to that, because a lot of times these creatives find themselves in a place where it's like, well, it's not quite there yet, but you can't say why. And so you're just in this exhausting cycle of, I don't know what my target is. And it's like, in all forms of creative, if you can't say why that color is wrong and it needs more this, if you can't say that note is off pitch, or I need the mix to change in this, if you can't say in the video that the pacing of that sequence is too slow, it needs to be sped up, that the score underneath, or the coloring, or we didn't use the right equipment on the last shoot, we're going to bring in the right equipment this time, because there's times where I'll say, I don't know what the gear's called, but I need our lenses to be able to accomplish this lighting effect. Can you get me that? It's very specific.
Yeah.
And that's the final 10% on both, to say we can hit clarity and beauty. It's really hard to get to the best of both. And what I've challenged our team with, and we've done this at different times, is we've taken the best in class of beauty and clarity and kind of created a digital bookshelf, if you will. It's just a slide in PowerPoint with literally shelves photoshopped on there. And we'll put some book covers, we'll put some screenshots of video, and then we'll take the project that we've worked on and we'll drop it up there. And we'll say, does that look like it belongs? Does it look like what we've just made belongs on the same shelf as some of the things that we were inspired by? And it's a really fun exercise to go, no, actually not at all. But then you have a great conversation of why. And maybe for the first time, you're going to start with your team articulating the why. Why didn't it? Well, for me, it just looks kind of flat. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it just looks very basic. Or I wish that we would have had more depth in the background on that video. Or I wish that we had more white space on that design. It just looks so crowded. And look how sleek and modern. And I can get to the point of that quicker because it's very, like they deleted and deleted and deleted until just what mattered remained. And so really trying to compare your work to existing work that you all respect is a good side-by-side.
That's great. Are there any overarching principles that you would say as a creative, as you approach your work, creativity with a purpose, so you're not just doing it for beauty's sake? What are some overarching principles or things that you would encourage people that are working the craft to kind of adhere to in that process? So I think the first thing you said is clarity around outcomes, like what is the purpose of this? Who's it for? Are there other principles that would align with that to help equip people to do the best work the first time around?
A couple things come to mind. It's kind of like the input equals the output. Consume good creativity and share that consumption with your team. So I think I'm thinking about things that we work on. If we're looking at the same source of inspiration, we're already going to be aligned. If I can go do our version of the thing that we like, that we just experienced, then we have a common kind of background knowledge that is going to help us align. So decide how you're going to consume creativity as a team. Decide what brands you're going to follow. Decide, like, what do you like? If you're working in a nonprofit, faith-based organization, a church, do you and your leaders have a same input source of inspiration? That is so helpful when you're dealing with logic people, emotional people. Are you consuming the same content? Are you sharing those ideas fluidly with each other?
Yeah.
So that this team isn't just like going super retro, hipster, cool, and this team is like going super linear, square-edged, logical. And then you're trying to say, like, there's no common ground. You want this, I want this. Like, be in this kind of learning stage together, consuming the same content is really important. Some other things, too, that I had written this down in advance, that there's kind of this beautiful intersection of humility in creativity, and especially in the work that we do. We're not trying to be so glossy and so showy that it looks like we spent more time on trying to be a world-class ad and not actually stir the hearts of people to the need. So there's a line there. Like, there's been times where I've seen people over-design.
Yeah.
And you could look at that and say, well, you're not pushing for the best beauty. That's not true. I'm actually making sure that beauty isn't just beauty for the sake of beauty.
Yeah.
That it still has a purpose. And to have the humility to say, we could make this a really slick ad, but it's going to be a bit tone deaf to the cause that we're trying to promote.
Yeah.
And it may not have taken any more time. Like, the truth of it is we didn't spend a lot of money on it. We didn't obsess over ourselves in the process. We just had a designer who was inspired by a campaign, and he mimicked it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it presented us in the wrong way.
Right.
And the second component would be, like, that's kind of where intelligence comes in. Is there intelligence in your design? So maybe the bridge between the masterful ability to take complex things and make them simple and the understanding the threshold of where beauty needs to sit in that, it has to have a high level of intelligence behind it. This is accomplishing what I intended to accomplish. It's hitting the right tone that I need to hit so that that felt need of what you feel and what we're doing is aligned. And then understanding the beauty component of, like, that could be the emotions of it. It could be the spiritual underpinning of it. Like, this is actually backed by a core conviction that we have. This is backed by the Bible. This is backed by the heart of God in this. This is backed by an opportunity, and the time is now. What God is doing in Asia, what's happening in Africa, what your opportunity to change your community right now. Those understandings, like everyone coming to the table with that kind of humility, again, creativity is very personal.
Yep.
And so one of the best remedies for that is to choose and to put into your culture of creatives a real commitment to humility.
That's good.
That I'm going to probably, in some of these creatives that I work with, their best ideas may come at 2 a.m. And they're going to roll into the next workday having really burdened themselves over a concept.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very personal to them.
Yeah.
And some of the hardest conversations in those moments where I'm just like very prayerful and very careful about how I approach it is I know how hard you've worked on this and it totally missed the mark.
Yeah.
And
you have to have those combos.
You have to have those combos, but how you have them,
Yep.
how you find the things, how you appreciate what they've done that is right, and continue to motivate them to do that all over again.
Yeah.
But teach them along the way. Like I want to model the humility. Like if that's a better idea, best idea wins.
That's right.
It's not about did I get to carry this and put my thing, like build a culture of like when we're humble and the objective was that this thing works, that this thing actually resonates with people, then no one's going to be too precious about their identity in it.
Yeah.
They will work hard, but humility is a huge piece of it.
So we talk about maybe too complex, maybe just beautiful. In a similar way, but a little bit different, sometimes creative projects are too logical or too emotional. And, I've seen that too, where we'll just continue with the whole like video at an event concept. You watch the video and it is so daggum boring because it's lots of numbers, it's lots of data, it's facts. It was built for an Excel spreadsheet, but put into a video.
Yeah.
And then you sit one and it's so emotional. Mm-hmm. Like you're to the end and you're emotionally drained, but again, you're just emotionally drained. Mm-hmm. So, like complex and beautiful, logical and emotional are also polar extremes.
Yeah.
I know that, everyone would say the marriage of those two things is where that really a beautiful story can begin to unfold. Mm-hmm. But it can't be too much of either because you begin to lose a portion of the audience or the storyline along the way somewhere. So how do you balance the necessity of logic and fact with the necessity of moving someone to a call to do something? There has to be an emotional quotient to that. Mm-hmm. How do you even think about that? Does it come out naturally? Do you go with a plan? Like explain for us non-creatives, us suppressive creatives. Yes. How a creative approaches that.
Yeah, you talk about the marriage of logic and emotion, and I would actually say it skews emotional, though. Mm-hmm. I would still lead with emotion.
I agree. Yeah, cool.
We and Liz and other people on our team talk about this a lot. We know neurologically we feel before we think.
Yes.
Even though it's
no doubt
a second.
No doubt.
But we come to immediate feelings about things before we even understand the full logic of them. So it's important for us as creatives to lead with emotion. Mm-hmm. We're not afraid to do that. But I have sat in situations where it was such a gut punch and it was so emotional, it was too heavy.
Yeah.
It was too
Definitely
heavy.
have seen that.
And I've been a part of it. What comes to mind is a video that I was a part of where we were interviewing a couple, and it was about a very devastating topic. And in theory, the topic was so relevant to the very problem that we were trying to solve, and it was going to serve the purposes of enlightening people. This is the difference that we can make. But the pain of the situation was still so raw that they could barely conduct themselves on camera. And they were having a total breakdown.
Wow.
On camera.
Yeah.
We tried to rework it. We couldn't. We had to cut it. And it was both not honoring to them to put them in that kind of spotlight when it was still that raw. And it didn't really serve the intended audience well either, because you ended up feeling just
horrible.
So bad. Yeah. Yeah. Like it almost felt like despair more than it felt like we're a part of the solution.
Yeah.
And that's an example of like, do you know when the emotion's gone too far? And then how do you marry those two is don't put the pressure of that marriage on one component. And I think, you and I have been to events. We were even at one last night where this is presented here and the call to action is the QR code or a landing page that you go to where the facts and the logic start to build through multiple steps. Or you see a high-level vision piece and the person immediately on stage afterwards starts to add in the logic. So I go back to what I was saying earlier of I don't care just about the video. I want to know the talking points of the person. It's all part of the narrative.
Sure.
And so lead with emotion. The marriage comes through multiple assets. The person who's trying to shove all of the information into a single asset because they need it to be a standalone, and understand when that's appropriate. Like we might put together a case for support that is a leave behind. It's 16 pages long. It can do both emotion and logic, and it should. It's going to be consumed in isolation. It's going to be handed to somebody. That needs to be a total story. So in that case, okay, great. What's the flow of that? How do we lead with some core questions or value propositions? And then by the time we get to the end, how do we get to a call to action and a dollar amount for a project that's needed?
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with just a video, you don't have to, you can have one line at the end. So visit this website to jump in today, or whatever it is, or the journey starts now and whatever. You don't have to package it all in there. So understand the sequence, understand that logic can actually follow emotion. It's hard to build really good emotion. And if you can find the right sweet spot of emotion, that's going to grab the attention. But yeah, it is a marriage, but I would skew it towards emotion, and then I would allow logic to sit in more logical places. If you do a good job emotionally, your measure of success of the emotion should be how many people took the next action, not the final conversion.
That's
so
good.
State what it is.
Yes.
Guys, the role of this is to get people to go to this page.
Yeah.
Can you measure that? Can you measure how many people went to the page?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We don't really know. We just know how many gifts we got in the end. Like measure where the breakdown was, because sometimes you might nail the emotion and you miss the logic. We created too much friction. The user experience wasn't good. It actually didn't get clear. There was too many options for me. You got me emotionally. But so if you don't have ways to measure, especially if you're building a campaign where there's multiple moving parts and you can't measure which part broke, you're going to have a really interesting review meeting because nobody can tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So try to measure everything.
That's good. I love the tension. And I think it's something that, as whether you are on the creative team working through the product itself, or you're the one who the product's being delivered to for evaluation, like having that kind of rigor to think that way is this meeting an emotional need? Is it an appropriate emotional need for the setting? Whether it's a printed piece that's left behind, as you mentioned, it's a video one-on-one. Is it a video in a large group? What is that experience? And how is it going to sit in that moment? And then does it provide a logical next step? I love the fact that you said it's not necessarily the conversion point. And I think oftentimes we get to like, if I don't get $1 after that, it didn't work. Not necessarily. Like, to your point, that may not be the context or the audience or the setting in which you can actually even get a gift or $1. It may be that in that environment, in that setting, in that moment, you need buy-in. You need recognition of the fact that that's the problem and we're the ones to solve it. So defining that is really important in the creative process, is like, how does this sit in the context of all the things that we're communicating in the lifespan of the ministry, in our awareness and the consciousness of the target audience, and allowing it to just live in that spot and not try to do more than it's designed to do.
That's right. And in its most basic level, I think sometimes, and we're all guilty of this, in a normal relationship, it takes time.
Yes.
You don't just become best friends. I mean, I was basically your best friend.
Basically.
Really quickly. No, but you learn each other. You get time to hang out. You have different experiences together. There might be a really emotional start to a relationship, a really out of the ordinary experience that jumpstarts something. You walk through a trial together or whatever, but a true relationship is built over time and consistency.
Yeah.
And for some reason, and we all know that.
Yeah.
But when you get into fundraising and marketing mindset and you're under the pressure of that, and you kind of throw some of that norm out the window and you think, oh, but in this case, now it has to be different.
Right.
And I need $1 from this video and I need it today.
Right.
You're like, but you know better. You know that that's not actually how it works. So can you set realistic goals for your creative team to say, I just want to move this relationship forward. And the measure of success is I want to migrate people from this to this.
Yeah.
Now, you have to have a strategy to say, how do we keep them moving?
Yep.
But too often, and even just this is very, very normal in our world. Even just today, before this podcast, I was talking with one of our client success people, and there's a pressure that a client feels to have a campaign that's a very awareness-driven campaign. It is not a conversion campaign. It is, you don't know we exist. I want to help you know that we exist. And they're putting an ROI on that that's very unrealistic. And so our guidance to them is, okay, if you want an ROI campaign that's going to look different than this, then we're just going to go straight for the ask, and we're probably going to have a smaller pool of people that will convert to that.
That's right.
But if you really want an awareness campaign, and I will say in our sector of people that we work with, there's not a lot of appetite for awareness campaigns. They're low ROI. They're the long game, and they require a really sophisticated mechanism to catch them now at the next level of relationship and move them again and move them again. So 18, 24 months down the road, you begin to see the ROI of that, and you want to be able to have measured all those steps. But that's a normal relationship.
Yeah.
Unless you're really socially awkward and you're just like love bombing people and trying to get into a relationship real quick, it doesn't actually work that way in real life.
And I think the inverse is also true. So there's so many times that we see, a video, a creative concept or creative project try to accomplish too much, get people to a place they're not ready to be at. And then I've been in some settings where the perfect moment was created. The environment was ripe.
You left it.
And you just fumbled the ball. So from the same perspective is being aware of and conscious of how the target audience is going to receive that information. And if they're ready to move, did you give them a chance to move? And there have been way too many times I've been in an environment, like a setting where there's a lot of people and there's some kind of a mode of communication, and they just didn't hit the mark. There was no call to the next step. It was just like, aren't we cool? And there's no one in the room that would doubt that. Everyone would be like, yes, you're cool. Standing ovation. Nothing. It just, and so I think we have to be careful on both ends to kind of over plan for something to do more than it actually can't do. But then also on the inverse, to under plan and not take advantage or not deliver for the audience. Like, they're expectant. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I'm so ready. Nothing. Go home and give us an attaboy. Well, that's not a good next step. So
I totally agree.
You see that same thing, right?
Oh, yeah. And you think about the book that Rick Dunham wrote to be the foundation of this organization, If God Will Provide, Why Do We Need to Ask for Money? And it's this whole conviction of growing in your confidence biblically to ask for money.
Yeah.
And how that's an act of worship where people put their treasure.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, too, because now we're looking at it from the other angle is what is the creative team and the messaging people, whether that's the CEO of the organization or the person that's on the stage or the person writing the letter or whatever it is, how many times there's this sense of I'm so insecure to ask right now. That actually over time, if you keep with this really soft, I'm not confident in what we're doing and therefore my appeal to you to get in this boat with us and row, it actually begins to erode that do you really believe in what you're doing?
Yep.
Because I'm with you and you built the case for it. So ask. And the creative team, like, understand that you're more than just this, we're a self-expression. Like, this is just expressing who we are. Can you actually steward that moment? Do you have an ability to steward this moment where you're like, I have your attention. I have some truth that I want to tell you about a reality of what we're faced with. Can I steward that into your call to action to come be a part of it? And I think it's been awesome to watch, and we have many stories of this, of organizations who didn't ask for a long time, but they have the trust there, they have the truth there, and as soon as we come into the equation, we say, here's how you need to build a fundraising strategy around this. Boom. It's explosive.
Yeah.
And people have offset the need to sell stuff and replaced it with donors getting on board to help advance the mission. And it's just been a pivot that we see happen time and time again is don't leave that moment. If you've got people there ready, they're telling you in every way through website traffic and consumption of content and attendance at events, they are there. Make the ask.
That's good. We could probably talk about creativity with a purpose for another hour. But I, if you've been watching or listening, I hope that your takeaways revolve around how do we set the creative team up best to produce a product that most closely hits the target we're aiming for. So the audience we're speaking to, what we want the audience to do, the way we want them to feel and react at the end of that. And then if you're on the creative side, that you're actually being as rigorous as well, that you're not afraid to ask the questions to ensure you have the information to provide a product that actually hits the mark. What other things would you help our audience leaves this conversation with, maybe either wrestling with or considering when they're approaching a creative product towards a purpose?
I think one thing that we're working on a lot right now is just eliminating waste. The creative process is clunky. It's very cumbersome. You're dealing with like ethereal stuff and what do you envision, missed expectations, etc. There's a lot of ways that I think, especially with technology today and AI and things like that, not asking, we have a conviction about how much should AI even create. We still have very heavy human touch on the creativity process of it. But things like AI can eliminate some waste. It can succinctly organize some meeting notes. It can succinctly put in action items. It can help with the process of it. There's a lot of waste, I think, that goes in that creates fatigue around creativity. So if leaders can really dial in, yes, I understand the right amount of iteration that's needed. I understand the right amount of space. Creative probably needs to have a quiet space to get alone and ideate and then come back. Working sessions are not always the best.
Yeah.
They're oftentimes solo thinkers. Or collaborative with the right kinds of people, but don't throw a really logical, administrative, financial person into the collaborative process with a creative. It's just not it's going to slow it down.
Yeah.
So if you can eliminate waste, I think that's a really good pursuit of, we need to produce things. And if you're a church, it's every 7 days. There's a new service coming around. If you're a nonprofit, there's all these deadlines to hit. I get it. Find ways to eliminate waste in the project management side of things, because then there's a new momentum in your creative team. No one wants to feel stuck.
Yeah.
No one wants to feel like every time I put something forth, it's 10 revisions later before we finally get it. Use that as a chance to go, okay, where are we wasting time here? Where were we unclear at the top? All that kind of stuff. I think that's a big thing that I'm really focused on right now. And I see a lot of discouragement in the creative space around waste. And so I would encourage people to leverage some tools that are available to us today to create clear briefs, to create clear process.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Again, we could probably talk about this forever.
Yeah.
But
Part 2.
It is fun. It's a great wrestle. But thanks for joining us today, Dan, for giving your insight and wisdom and experience. And thank you for listening to today's episode of the Cause and Effect Podcast. Join us again next time.
And thanks for listening to the Cause and Effect Podcast, a resource developed by Dunham+Company.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. In the meantime, do us a favor. If you like this content, subscribe, share us with a friend, leave us a review on your podcast provider, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Dunham+Company to help us spread the word.
Thanks again, and join us next time as we work together towards increased effectiveness for more impact.